have health insurance through being part of this cooperative and able to send their children to school and to really stay on their land and stay connected to cultural identity in that way. So um, this is something that um, that is a really important piece of why having fair trade is an alternative to some of the destructive um, results of unjust free trade agreements. And so we just wanted to touch briefly on that, and I'm sure that Jed, who works with our Joining Hands program, has a lot more to say about free trade. So I will give it to Jed now.
Thank you, Jessica. The TPP came on our radar about 5 years ago when a corporation based in New York sued the state of Peru for $800 million, claiming that its rights as a foreign investor, as stipulated within the free trade agreement between the U.S. and Peru, were being violated. The reason they were suing is because this investor, Ranco Group from New York, has its investment in a town in the Andes where they have a metal smelter. And for years, our partners have been addressing the issue of contamination there and the impacts on the health of the people, pressuring the government to enforce environmental regulations already in place. And when they finally did begin to enforce those regulations, the corporation sued because it was going to cost them more money than they anticipated. And so that violated their rights within the trade agreement, so they claim, certain rights to make a profit, basically. And that was within the framework of the U.S.-Peru trade agreement, and it was the first such lawsuit against Peru at that time within that trade agreement. So we began studying the issue and this right to be able to sue a government in a foreign tribunal. And then we learned about the TPP, which will provide this same right to foreign investors to sue governments when they start implementing or enforcing regulations that are going to cost them profit. There, 15, 20 years ago, there were a handful of these cases, maybe a couple dozen. Today, there are hundreds of these cases of corporations suing states. And it not only costs the state money, the more critical damage is that it undermines democratic process, the regulations that are being put in place or that they're trying to enforce, particularly environmental and public health regulations. One of the more recent cases that has come up just within the last month is actually a lawsuit by a Canadian corporation against the United States for $15 billion because of Obama's decision to try and stop the Keystone pipeline. And so that is a new one. It kind of shows how this impact is not just around the world, it's in the U.S. as well. And we'll see more and more hundreds of these cases impacting the sovereignty of states around the world. So that's the issue that we've been addressing in particular. There's also issues globally around intellectual property, how that's going to increase costs, access to medications. Those are the two big ones that we're seeing in Peru. So the rights to sue a state, and then intellectual property rights for corporations as well. So that, I guess, is my 3 to 4 minutes kind of the impacts that we're seeing here in Peru.
Great. Do you want me to jump in? And this is Pam.
Yeah, thanks, Pam. I was muted, but yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. So building on the work that Jed and the others coordinators in our different country partnerships are doing. Valerie and Ruth met with 3 of us this past December to kind of reorganize the way that we're doing our justice work in partnership with our different in-country partners. And so we've decided to create 3 different interest area networks, one around trade justice, one around the extractives industries, and one around food justice issues. And I'm going to be chairing the one on trade, so that we're hoping that as people in the church travel to different countries and visit and get to know the issues firsthand, when they get back here to the U.S., we wanted a way for them to connect with back in the U.S. with the different issues that are affecting all of our partners. So, so that's sort of the way that we've restructured things a little bit. Specific to trade, I'm going to be working on trying to increase our visibility and our partnership throughout the U.S. with different presbyteries and with other interfaith partners. And we'll be holding monthly calls and webinars, hoping to both educate and inform folks and get people involved in the issue, visiting their congresspeople, writing their congresspeople, so that we can defeat the TPP, because that is our ultimate goal, at least right this minute. And then we'll also be educating on some of the other issues regarding trade. As the TPP hopefully is defeated and goes the way of the dumpster, hopefully we'll be able to talk about some of the other issues with trade that affect our partners. So.
Fabulous. Thanks, Pam.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got Catherine Gordon in the Office of Public Witness in D.C. Looks like you're still on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, here in DC, I guess I just wanted to talk a little bit about our work, what we're doing here. And I want to start off by just saying the importance of the grassroots advocacy, because no matter how much we're pushing here, no matter how big our coalitions are, if members of Congress aren't hearing from their constituents, there's not a big grassroots movement. We really have little hope of succeeding. And especially with this issue, because there's so much corporate power and money involved, it's even more important. And I think the faith community can be very strong on issues and very effective when we believe we can and we get mobilized. But I think with this issue, people see it as a complicated issue. So I think it's very important for our grass tops and the people that are involved in our networks to reach out to the people around them and begin to educate their neighbors and friends on these issues so that people become aware, because it's almost like water. We're living in this and we don't see what's happening. Here in DC, we have several coalitions that we work with. The Interfaith Working Group on Trade and Investment is the major faith coalition that I've been working with for over 15 years, starting with the FTAA, the Central America Free Trade Agreement. And we have good relationships on the Hill, and we do direct advocacy, representing the faith community with members of Congress. And then we're also working with the Citizens Trade Campaign, who does specific targeting. I think I worked with some of you all on the Himes in the fast track vote on that. And so we're also looking at specifically members of the House that can be targeted, who are might be influenced more easily. And then we we're through the Interfaith Working Group on Trade Investment, we have 3 upcoming webinars, and we decided to focus on specific issues because sometimes the Trans-Pacific Partnership can be so broad in the there's so many issues that it encompasses that a lot of times our activists come at it through one issue. For example, like La Oroya or access to medicines. The PCUSA AIDS network is concerned about the TPP specifically because of access to medicine. So we've decided to have on January 20th, there'll be one on the environment and the investor state provisions. On January 27th, there'll be one on labor and economic inequality. And then on February 4th, there'll be one on access to medicines. And they're all at 3 p.m. And our office will be sending out more publicity and emails and Facebook posts on those specific webinars. And did you want me to go into some of the details of the TPP, or is that good?
If there are a couple highlights, you've still got them.
Well, okay. Yeah, because there's different messaging that different organizations choose to message differently. I think the faith community has been particularly concerned about what's going to happen to the least of these, especially because it's impacting our partners around the world. But other organizations like Citizens, Public Citizen, have noticed or have done messaging testing and talk more about the impact of what's going to happen in the United States. So a lot of times we combine both of those angles. So the top major areas are the offshoring U.S. jobs and driving down wages because corporations will benefit from these agreements and will be able to go to exploit labor in countries like Vietnam where people are paid less than 65 cents an hour. So it's sort of a race to the bottom, wherever the corporations can make more profit, and it doesn't matter whether their labor laws are good or not. And it's also undermining the environmental protection. So if corporations, through the investor state provisions, if countries pass legislation to protect their environment and it interferes with the profit of the corporation can sue, which was what Jed was talking about earlier. So that's another one of the issues. It's also jeopardizing the safety of the food, our food. It allows exporters to challenge border food safety inspection procedures. So that's another issue in terms of food safety, and also access to medicine in terms of intellectual property rights, and pharmaceutical firms are benefiting from this agreement in terms of new monopoly rights on specific, especially cancer treatments. So the length of the patent. So before a drug can be made generically, it's only made by the company that has the rights to it, and that the time period that they have has extended. So there's 20-year patents, and then it's also one of the major things, and this has been a major thing I think for the PCUSA too. Is the elevating of investor rights over human rights and democracies, which is what we were talking about in terms of the investor state provisions, and allowing corporations to sue governments that simply want to democratically define what their policies towards their people and the environment will be.
That's great, thanks. And I was just thinking it's great that Laura Valencia is also on. It would be great to hear from her after Rebecca about the just perspectives from Via Campesina and from what you're seeing and hearing in India would be really excellent. So yeah, I'm going to talk briefly about Food Mag and the TPP. And can you see my screen? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So yeah, food and ag, and that's butter up in Canada. Doesn't look really appetizing when it's on that scale. So yeah, here are the promises, some of the promises that relate to food and agriculture. That it will unlock vast opportunities for farmers and ranchers, basically creating this duty-free trading region for food and ag products. Um, he's also promising that the intellectual property rights will receive even stronger protections for the patents, trademarks, all these trade secrets that many in the agri-food world value greatly. So that will continue as it has in all of the free trade agreements. So in terms of the duty-free trade zone, U.S. food and ag exports are already quite high. I think they've diminished a little bit in the last year or so, but we're talking about 148 billion roughly in 2013, and 58 billion, so more than a third, is to the countries that are encompassed in the TPP. So how that plays out, right now, U.S. poultry, for example, faces a 40% tariff in Malaysia. With the TPP, either immediately or over a few years, that tariff will go to zero. For a lot of products, it goes immediately as of the passing of the TPP. So theoretically, exports would go up, but what that means on the ground is that the competition, with cheap chicken coming into the country, Malaysian poultry producers, like the corn farmers in Mexico, will be negatively impacted. So, just looking at winners and losers, some of the big winners are seen to be the beef producers, which in the US is already a super monopolized industry where three companies hold over 80% of the market. So they've already got huge power, huge clout in the markets, and will be able to sell even more beef to densely populated countries in Asia. So they're salivating about the TPP. Along with that, a lot of beef is fed by soybeans. So soybean producers are going to be winners in many ways, both with the diminishing of duties on exports. They'll be able to sell even more. And I don't know if people know that soybeans is by far the biggest export commodity of U.S. farmers, and currently at about $5.5 billion. So soybean producers are going to be winners as well as U.S. rice exporters. A lot of the TPP is around reducing duties, tariffs, etc. And rice farmers in Arkansas and California are excited about the TPP. Japanese rice farmers would be pretty upset about it, but the government is going to pay them not to produce rice. So they were appeased through some negotiations on that end. Ano- um, who was it that talked about food safety earlier on? Maybe both Pam and Catherine may have mentioned it, but yeah, the push now is to have any safety, the sanitary and phytosanitary rules be science based. And what that means is there's got to be proof that it's bad for you, as opposed to a precautionary principle that assumes that it may be bad and it should be proven that it's not bad before it should be fed to people. So yeah, there's specifics on food safety, but basically it does jeopardize the safety of the food, and it also limits other countries to prevent unwanted food from coming in. For example, if you can't prove that GMOs are bad, then it will be a trade infringement to limit that from being imported into your country. So the losers, given the type of agriculture that beef production and soybean production are, for example, are clearly the environment, the impact on the atmosphere and climate, and small and medium family farmers who will find it even harder to compete with these pro-industry ag rules. Canadian dairy producers, that's kind of a long story, but they were still using supply management, just producing enough for the demand in Canada. The TPP would make some opening to that, so they're not happy. And then in terms of other losers, transparency is a loser. The country of origin labeling, which was passed a few years back, would certainly be threatened because that puts the labeling of where a meat comes from, or it should eventually, if it gets fully implemented, on the labelers, on the producers, and the TPP considers this a trade infringement, so would be challenged. So that may be a loser, as well as the precautionary principle I just mentioned. And overall, the TPP favors kind of producer rights and large producers at that, and so the consumers are the ones who will lose in the end. I can send these notes around. There's some specifics that people may be interested in, but that's it for me. And I think just Rebecca, and maybe we can hear from Laura after Rebecca and then have some conversation.
Yeah, Andrew, if you can show my screen, I'm just going to take a quick 2 minutes because we do want to have time for exchange, questions and answers, and others of you to share what you know. So I just wanted to put this, considering that yesterday was our holiday with Martin Luther King Jr., that we think a little bit about environmental justice. I don't know, Andrew, am I missing that you're giving me screen showing?
I hit it twice. Okay. Now I think it will go to you.
Okay. Great. So just, most people are very well aware of environmental justice. This is the definition from the EPA, and I think when we're talking about climate and trade, as everybody so far has already said, we're really talking about people having meaningful involvement and voice, so the issues of transparency, and also asking questions of power and who wins and who loses, as Andrew just did. So putting this in a perspective of environmental justice, for me, goes back to the 1995 General Assembly policy on hazardous waste and race, but connects a long time ago to that, to messages like Dr. King's about the shifts we need to take. And we are still living in a time in the U.S. where 1 in 6 African American children is affected by asthma. A letter about the Clean Power Plan, which is domestic agreement or policy coming out of the EPA, was sent out by Ebenezer Baptist Church yesterday or the day before. So a lot of folks are rallying around this because it's an issue of domestic as well as international. So I think where it comes in is the picture on the left of the bayou and what we know about climate change, horrific impacts always on the most vulnerable, and as Jed and Catherine both mentioned, La Arroya, where lead poisoning from companies is happening overseas. That these are really environmental justice issues and asking important questions that we need to continue to pay attention to. Some of the questions communities are going to ask, of course, are what are the protections, what are the risks, who's suffering most, and who has meaningful participation and voice engagement. You've already heard that the TPP fails on a lot of these fronts. Specifically, there are threats to forest, wildlife, and fish. There is a very good chance that there will be an increase in liquefied natural gas and maybe crude oil exports from the U.S. And the unfettered rights to the corporations that we've already mentioned in this call, as Jed said in La Arroya's case in Peru, but also other places, that really is a strong environmental risk. There are, if you read Sierra Club, NRDC, and others, there are maybe a couple decent environmental rules in the entire long TPP, but they're fairly unlikely to be heavily enforced, and the language is pretty weak. So that's just an overview. I think you saw in other people's things, as Andrew mentioned as well, with food and all of that, that the environmental justice questions that we want to ask when we're talking about environmental laws and situations are the same across the board, domestic and international. And we would reject the TPP and encourage all Presbyterians and all people to, based on these moral failings of the document.
Thanks, Rebecca. So, Laura, not to put you on the spot, but to put you on the spot, can you share kind of what La Via Campesina and folks in India are doing around the trade agreement?
Sure. So India is not actually going to be a signatory of the TPP. Can you hear me? I'm off mute.
Yep.
Just checking. Okay. Yeah, so India is actually not a signatory of the TPP, but what we're seeing is like a shift from the hegemony of organizations like the WTO, multilateral organizations, towards bilateral free trade agreements and regional free trade agreements such as the TPP, which is really changing the game, I think, for a lot of countries. So even countries who don't want to be part of those bilateral free trade agreements are threatened by them because it really changes the way that agriculture is dealt with at the international level, for example. So the WTO ministerial happened in last December, about a month ago, and we were very disappointed to see that small farmers' interests were completely pushed aside at the WTO ministerial, and many aspects of the agreements that did come out of it are only going to set us back even further than we already are. But organizations, farmers' movements in India are very active on trade because in India we've experienced it. I mean, like there was when cotton was imported with no tariffs, I think about 10 to 15 years ago, we ended up with several tens of thousands of suicides of cotton farmers. So it's not just a theoretical impact for the movements. They don't have to stretch their brains too much to see how free trade agreements are impacting small agriculturalists. They feel it immediately. So there is a lot of popular education happening around free trade agreements since the 80s and 90s. The movements are very active on these issues. And I think overall, the kind of support that we need in our region, because I'm within the South Asian region, is to for North American-based organizations to do exactly what you guys are doing and really reach out to your congressmen and women and organize your bases to make sure that there's pressure on all sides.
And that's a great segue into what we wanted to open up to everyone in terms of, how do we be better advocates? How do we do that popular education, starting with, our family members, our colleagues, our friends. And so, I wanted to, Catherine started talking about messaging, but just open it up broadly to ideas around what works. How do you connect with people on these issues, which can seem wonkish on first blush? And maybe, Gina, you've been doing a lot of this. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on when talking to people, what seems to resonate or get them interested. But anyone could jump in.
Well, this is Gina, and I have found that starting the conversation with where folks' interests are, especially if you're talking
people who are already committed to various justice issues, talking to them about, okay, what are you currently working on? And then giving a couple of quick facts of how the TPP and other trade agreements impact that work. And then that's the entrance to pulling them in on this issue when sometimes you're talking to folks who already have very full plates and doing great work, and it can sound like we're asking them to just take on a whole nother issue, and really we're just saying the work you're doing is part of this work. One resource is a trifold board that has various issues and then just little factoids on about the environment. Do you care about healthcare? Do you care about financial regulations? All of the things that you all have been. Then little questions or little statements, and then an example for each of those statements of how trade agreements have impacted the issue. And I'm working to create that a quiz thing that can be done on the computer, since I'm not carrying around my big trifold board. But that's just so that's a subtopic of resources. But I think in discussion, it's what do you care about, and starting there and linking it to trade.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, this is Catherine. I found that to be true, particularly like with the PCUSA HIV/AIDS network when they were first started being interested in the TPP and what was happening. It was because of access to medicines. It was directly related to something that they've been working hard on. So. And I just wanted to say that we have an action alert up on our website on the Trans-Pacific Partnership if people want to go and contact their member of Congress, and you can use the link to publicize it to give people some kind of action to take. And then also Ecumenical Advocacy Days and Compassion, Peace, and Justice Training Day is also up. Registration is up on our website, and that is the theme is Racism, Class, and Power, Lift Every Voice. And it's a really good place to come and network with other Presbyterians and also the interfaith community. So if you are the ecumenical community. So if you're looking to find other like-minded people, and I think this topic lends itself to those who are interested in issues around corporate power. So if you want to go to Ecumenical Advocacy Days, you can look on our website. It's pcusa.org/Washington, and registration is up.
Other thoughts on this?
This is Pam. I guess what I've found is that, as others have said, this agreement, the TPP, affects everybody. So there is a way to get to, or a way that it's going to affect every single person on the planet. And as Gina said, you just have to find what their issue is. But I mean, from the price of medicines to the threat to our democracy, to the threat to our environment, the threat to human and labor rights. I mean, there's got to be something that people of faith and people in general can say, this is wrong, this is not, this, we can't let this happen. And I think the message that I hear from a lot of outside groups that I work with is this is mainly a threat to our democracy, and a threat to democracies all around the world. But it's this takeover of corporate power. It's just another power grab by the corporate elite. So I think, as Gina said, you have to find the issue that speaks to the heart of the people that you're trying to reach. But there's an issue out there for everybody that's going to hit home.
Just to add to that, in 20 seconds, we need to take action now. the TPP is
A
supposed
little
to be
louder,
signed.
Valerie.
The TPP, there are many people are saying it will be signed. The final text might be signed next month in a couple of weeks in New Zealand. So the time to take action is right now. After all of this has been signed and agreed, it will take 50 years to try to undo it. We need to take action now. As Pam just said, it affects all of us. 40% of the global economy. It affects pretty much everything we do every day. Our food, our environment, intellectual property, pretty much everything. So the time to take action on TPP is now.
And Jed, I wonder if.
We can't.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, echoing what Valerie said, we can't undo this. If this passes, we're done for in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's huge, the biggest one yet. And Jed, I know you like Laura live overseas and probably have a better perspective on the U.S. in some ways, and also do a lot of interpretation here. What do you find is helpful for folks in the U.S.? What resonates with people around this?
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, my connection to the U.S. is, primarily through, with churches that have an interest in global mission per se, global issues. And so, an emblematic case like La Roya is powerful. That anywhere I tell the story of La Roya, whether it's a relatively progressive congregation or even a really conservative congregation, theologically and probably politically, it wakens people up to say that there's something wrong about the rights of children to breathe clean air, being overridden by a corporation's rights to make as much money as it can. I think anyone with any bit of common sense can hear that story and say, yeah, something needs to be changed here. So I think good emblematic cases are not good, but powerful emblematic cases do impact people. I love this conversation because part of my hope has always been to to show that this does impact everyone, as Pam and others have said, and that I think we try to address root causes of poverty. We say this in the Presbyterian Church. We often look at specific cases like La Roya and how can we impact that, and that's good. But at the end of the day, some of the root causes of what's impacting La Roya are the root causes of what are impacting small town middle America or urban New York or what have you. And so I think linking those issues together is powerful as well. So the emblematic case, but then also linking it to what's happening in your backyard or down the street from you in the U.S. I think that resonates with some audiences.
Yeah, for sure. Those stories are invaluable for getting people engaged at an emotional level as well. But then, as Catherine was talking about, then going upstream to the corporations that are writing a lot of these agreements.
Mm-hmm.
Joanna or Gina or Jessica, any final words? Any thoughts as you've been listening? Things you wanted to say?
Well, this is Gina again, and I have a request.
Mm-hmm.
Going to the Take Action Now. I'm working in 3 and maybe 4 areas that are identified by Citizens Trade Campaign. Tax that folks have in those areas, and that's San Diego, Connecticut, the Raleigh-Durham area of North Carolina, and then possibly Washington State, if I can get up there. So if you have any friends, any contacts, or anything like that, I would love to talk so that I can reach out to those folks as I'm trying to do.
Great. Yeah, and if you want, go ahead and post on the Facebook page. I think entered on that as well for this group, just to remind us of the places.
Great.
People want to find that. Joanna, Jessica, Jenna Barabee, any final thoughts since you've been listening, thinking about this? Alex Haney just joined us. Hi, Alex.
Hello.
So, when we send out like the information from this call, I assume, Valerie, we can share information about the tables, the joining hand tables, and see if people want to get involved in any of those particular tables as well. So we can share that information. And yeah, others. Final words, thoughts?
We'll be having calls. Our calls will start probably either next week or the week after, and Valerie will send out invitations to those. So
Great.
keep an eye out for that.
Perfect. Well, thanks everyone for taking the time and sharing your wisdom and our collective commitment to talk with folks, get people riled up about this, and get them to send letters, meet with their Congress people, and give your contacts to Gina. And stay tuned for an email, and feel free to share things on the group Facebook page, things that you find helpful that others might as well. And we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Andrew.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.